So it's not a complete carte blanche to carry out a military coup, because clearly that's not part of his constitutional duty. That's not part of what's allowed in the Constitution for the president. So that wouldn't attract absolute immunity. But circumstances like that, there could be an argument that the president is now has the presumption of immunity, and it has to be shown otherwise by the prosecution. So you can see that simply by having this set down in black and white for the first time in history, it's created this big debate and shown up what I think has long been known, that there is a presumption that not everyone in America is the same.
Joe Biden there. Well, let us talk to David Charter, the assistant US editor for The Times. Hello to you, David.
Greetings from Washington, D.C., John.
Hi, David. So that Supreme Court ruling, it certainly caused waves, hasn't it, to emanate outwards?
Oh, no doubt, because it is the first time in American history that it's ever been set down in black and white, just what the presidential shield is, if you like, from malicious prosecution or justified prosecution, for that matter. The Supreme Court many decades ago had decided that the president was immune from civil actions to prevent people trying to stop and to intimidate the president from taking action. But he'd never before had a character like Donald Trump come along, and the first president to be prosecuted, of course, in criminal cases, 4 of them, in fact. Never before has it been faced with this appeal up to the Supreme Court that surely the president of the United States enjoys some measure of protection from what the Trump supporters say they call lawfare, which is the weaponization of the legal system against him. So into the middle of this political maelstrom comes perhaps the most ideological court for a century, really. It's 6-3 conservatives to liberals. The decision on immunity, this wide-ranging scope of immunity they set out in their ruling, was 6-3, the 6 conservatives against the 3 liberals. And one of the liberals, in fact, the most liberal member, Sotomayor, said, well, look, this just allows the president the freedom to order the special forces to assassinate his rivals. He'll be immune. What if he organizes a military coup? He'll be immune. In my view, that goes too far. That's overdone, because what the Supreme Court tried to set out was different levels of immunity. One, absolute immunity for the president in his constitutional actions, and then the presumption of immunity for all other official acts, and then no immunity at all for when he's acting privately in his own private affairs. So it's not a complete carte blanche to carry out a military coup, because clearly that's not part of his constitutional duty. That's not part of what's allowed in the Constitution for the president. So that wouldn't attract absolute immunity. But circumstances like that, there could be an argument that the president is now has the presumption of immunity, and it has to be shown otherwise by the prosecution. So you can see that simply by having this set down in black and white for the first time in history, it's created this big debate and shown up what I think has long been known, that there is a presumption that not everyone in America is the same in front of the law, that the president does enjoy a special status.
And while those lower courts, the Supreme Court pushes the judgment of what is permitted and what isn't, largely back to those lower courts, while that is sorted out, it means that other cases are going to be shoved off beyond the November election, which is, of course, exactly where Donald Trump wanted them.
Yeah, I think the real complaint of the Democrats is that the Supreme Court decision was actually rather broad and left it up to the lower courts, as you say, to go through case by case and incident by incident on all of his communications, like his Twitter postings. Which one of those was done as an official act, and which one was a personal act? Did it change during the day? All of that's going to be litigated and it will take weeks and weeks and weeks to go through all of this. And so the real upshot of it is that the case just can't be heard and before the election. And of course, if Trump wins the
Yes.
election, this is a federal case, so he will take over the executive of the federal government, and he can fire the special counsel. He can get rid of Jack Smith, who's brought the case, and that'll be an end to it.
Yeah. I mean, meanwhile, we've already now seen Donald Trump seizing on this ruling, David, to challenge his criminal convictions in the porn star hush money trial.
Yeah, this is the one that's been completed and is likely to be the only one completed before the election. You'll recall that he was convicted on all accounts of paying off Stormy Daniels to keep quiet about their alleged brief affair. So even today, we've just heard that the prosecution in that case in Manhattan has actually said, we agree there should be a delay in sentencing. We don't accept that Trump's been given a new argument to destroy the case and to have it thrown out. But we do agree that at least it should be litigated. It should be heard. So the sentencing that was set for July the 11th, just before the Republican convention, by the way, looks like it won't take place now. It'll be delayed to see if this Supreme Court case has a bearing on his conviction and on the way he should be sentenced. So it means that we'll be going into the Republican convention where Trump will be nominated as the presidential candidate without knowing if he actually faces jail time for his hush money convictions.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier on, David, we haven't seen, I don't know, an ideologically enmeshed Supreme Court of America like this for maybe for a century or more. Just tell me how that is playing out, because the Supreme Court, such an important pillar of the American Constitution, is now right at the center of the political battle. And that is, again, another extraordinary facet of political life in the USA.
Absolutely, and I hesitate to say it's become a central election issue, because really it's been a central election issue at successive elections. I think one reason why people held their nose and voted for Trump in 2016 was because the Republicans had the chance to make a Supreme Court appointment and shift the court more onto the conservative side. And indeed, Trump was able to appoint 3 members of the 9-member court. That's a lot in one term. But going into the next election, this pendulum has swung towards the Democrats in terms of the politics, because they can now say, look, we told you that if you elected Trump, you'd get the most political, ideological court in generations. The court has ended the federal guarantee of abortion treatment, that only by electing Democratic presidents can you get more liberal members of the judges on the court who can correct and restore the universal right of access to abortion, for example, and also correct what they see as this authoritarian style ruling, giving the president way too much protection to do as he pleases. Biden's big speech last night, his first public appearance at the White House since his really disastrous debate performance, was setting out a new campaign pledge that, you've got to re-elect me, because what will Trump do with all this protection he's now been given that's been set down by the Supreme Court? Do you really want Trump to be unfettered by, we've seen how he escapes impeachment, which is the only other way of bringing him to account. Now, there's no chance of him being brought to account by this court, is the argument of the Democrats.